Hello, welcome back. My name's Daniel Grimali. Today I want to talk about the Kramnik allegations, which have been rocking the chess world. So obviously Vladimir Kramnik. Let's talk a little bit about who is Vladimir Kramnik. Vladimir Kramnik is a former world chess champion. He won the World Chess Championships in the year 2000, beating none other than Garry Kasparov, the great Garry Kasparov. I actually attended that match. Funny enough, I'm like a good luck charm for Kramnik because there were only 2 games I attended that whole match, and most of them were draws. Like every game was a draw, apart from 2 games which Kramnik won. And the only 2 games I attended were the 2 games that Kramnik won, so I was quite lucky in that respect. I believe he beat him in a D4, Knight F6, C4. Yeah, I believe he beat him in a Grunfeld, kind of like a Bishop G4 Grunfeld, right? And then there was a kind of a Nimzo where Garry collapsed in 20 odd moves. I heard a rumour about that match that apparently it was fixed. And the idea was it was this kind of Russian sponsor. And he was going to... Apparently the 1995 match with Anand was fixed as well. The Kasparov versus Anand, which took place in the World Trade Center. High up in the World Trade Center. I think it was quite near the... there was like a restaurant there, apparently. The window on the world. And it took place on the same floor as that, or something like that. In a room off that restaurant. So you obviously go get your food and then you can go and watch the chess, right? But obviously, sadly, the building collapsed when it was hit by planes. But that was later. But yeah, 1995 match, and the idea that was fixed as well. It seems a bit far-fetched, right? But anyway, Kramnik is a great player. Regardless of what you believe about those silly rumours, Kramnik is undoubtedly a great player. Now, he's been going around saying that he thinks that some of these games on Title Tuesday are not legit. He thinks a lot of these players, he claims as much as 25% of people on Title Tuesday are cheating. Do I agree with that? Probably not. I think that's too high. Now, my own experience with playing online has been that I think a few years ago, every 4 or 5 games, you would probably get somebody who's a bit suspicious, right? You know, some of them are really, really obvious, and they would just absolutely massacre you. And you'd see that the account, you look up the account, and you see it was just created a few days ago, and they've suddenly got massively high ratings. So, but I think that chess.com, sites like chess.com, Lead Chess, and probably other sites as well, have done a good job of cleaning up the cheating. They've had a lot of people come into chess very quickly. And of course, there have been cases where people have cheated online, and actually well-known cases, as we've seen with people like Hans Niemann. There were also a number of other GMs around about that point who were, you know, I think they did a secret release where they basically said these are the other accounts, GMs that have been closed. So it's not just lower rated players, it's also GMs who are cheating as well. It's grandmasters who are cheating online. Shame on us, right? So Kramnik does believe that. He believes that not only are amateur players often cheating, but he believes that there's a serious case where strong players, he alluded to a particular player, I'm not going to name who I think it is, I've got a good feeling for who I think this player is, that this player, according to Kramnik, finished no higher than 60th when he played in the over-the-board World Blitz Championships. But when he played in Title Tuesday, he often finishes right up there. This guy's over 3,000. He's generally over 2,900. Or he's generally, I should say, maybe not genuinely, but generally over 2,900 or 3,000 on chess.com. And Kramnik said he played someone like Magnus and lost to the, in a normal match that wasn't Title Tuesday, lost like 7-1 or something. But then when he plays Title Tuesday, he's bang up there. He's often doing very, very well. Not sure if this guy's ever won a Title Tuesday or won several Title Tuesdays, but he's often up there. This is what Kramnik was saying. And I think that's a legitimate point, that if you're having these kind of results online, why aren't you finishing in the top 15, top 20? I've often wondered why Nakamura hasn't won a World Blitz Championships when he does so well in Title Tuesdays. He's been so dominant online. The only player you would really compare to him online is Magnus Carlsen. In my opinion, Nakamura and Carlsen are a class above everybody else when it comes to online. So why hasn't Nakamura ever won a World Blitz Championship? Why has he never won a World Rapid Play? Well, you know, I'm not going to make any allegations against Nakamura. I think he's genuinely like incredibly strong player, and I think the reason is that these tournaments that only come along once a year. There's only one of them every year, right? And he has won a number of strong blitz tournaments over the board. So Nakamura is that's a different case. That's a legitimate superstar, right? But there are, what Kramnik says is there are players a little bit below that level. Now, is it, in the case of Nakamura, you would say he's probably slightly better online, right? He's probably slightly better with the mouse. His reaction time is slightly quicker. There's a difference playing over the board chess as opposed to online. When you see Magnus Carlsen play over the boards blitz, there's kind of fluidity about the way he moves the pieces almost. It's like, it's so quick, right? It's just so smooth. And something you can learn something from. But yeah, I do think that people exaggerate, you know, when they say that people are much stronger online than they are over the board. I don't really buy that. I just think that, yeah, having those fast mouse skills can make maybe a small difference of bullet. But it's not gonna, you know, it's not gonna get you 300-400 points at like 3-minute chess, right? It shouldn't, you know. So when people are lower than their over the board ratings, so when they're higher than that, much higher than their over the board ratings, so you place some people that are like 2100 FIDE, and yet they're 2600, 2700 on lead chess. Now, why is that? Why are they 2100 blitz over the board? Well, in some cases they are cheating, but I think in most cases it's probably because they're a younger player. They haven't played much over the board tournaments, haven't played enough over the board tournaments for their rating to catch up yet with their how good they are. So it's people who generally play a lot over the board. So I don't buy into this thing that people are better, are much better over the board than they are. I think you're as good as you are, right? That is, you know, if you're 2400, it should show in your online chess as well. You shouldn't be like 2700 level online, you know, if you're a 2400 FIDE player. Anyway, Kramnik was making this insinuation about this player, and he essentially has done a number of YouTube videos now where he's essentially said the same thing, which is that he believes that certain players perform at a higher level in Title Tuesday than they do either over the board or in normal online games. He thinks that they cheat in Title Tuesday because it gives them something to brag about. I've beaten Kramnik. I mean, a friend of mine played Kramnik in Title Tuesday and beat him in the Title Tuesday. A friend of mine called Richard Pert. He's a strong player. He's an IM. Richard would probably be a GM if he hadn't got a full-time job. His brother's GM and also former British champion. Now, he beat Kramnik, but Kramnik kind of made his sarcastic comments. So he basically said, oh, congratulations to this player, blah, blah, blah. And most of all, congratulations to Richard Pert, you know, in a sarcastic way, right? And the very next week, Richard was asked to play Title Tuesday on a Zoom call. The entire Title Tuesday on a Zoom call. Can you imagine that? It's not a very comfortable experience, right? You're having to play. I think there's double standards there. I think if you put certain players on a Zoom call, unless you've got genuine evidence for suggesting they're cheats, if you put certain players on a Zoom call, you have to put everybody on a Zoom call, basically. Or you put nobody on a Zoom call. This is the problem that chess.com have. I think they realise that putting people on a Zoom call is an uncomfortable experience. And that might put them off, and then they might, in theory, go to another platform. And then they're going to lose money, right? Or they just say, look, just do whatever you want. Let's just call it the Wild West, right? We're not bothered with any kind of anti-cheating, you know. So I think they've got to strike a balance between obviously seeming to be a legitimate website where people are not cheating, and also they don't want to discourage people from using their platform. So that's a difficult balancing act that they have to perform, and I think they've done a fairly reasonable job of it. And I think Kramnik, with some of the things he said, I think are unfair. I think chess.com have done a good job. But yeah, I do think there's double standards also with Kramnik as well. So essentially, if I was to beat Kramnik, or someone like Kamsky has also been quite vocal about calling out cheaters. A typical phrase that Kamsky will use is something like, "This guy's too accurate," right? The same thing with Kramnik. So if you beat them, they might well just straight out, one game you beat them, and they're going to say, "Look, this guy's a cheat." That was the issue that I had with Kramnik accusing Richard. He only lost him in one game, right? Now, one game isn't enough. One good tournament is not enough. People can perform above their level. 2400 players can make GM norms. I was a 2400 player. I made like almost a 2700 performance in the tournament in Gibraltar. I was only 2470 at the time. Was I cheating? No, I wasn't. I just performed above my level. That can happen. You should acknowledge that and not say, "Look, this guy's cheating." On the other hand, if Kramnik beat me, there would be nothing at all. There would essentially be, no kind of fuss made about it. It would just be like, "Well, Kramnik's beating you, so what? Who cares? Let's move on." That's what you would expect, right? So yeah, these are my thoughts about the whole Kramnik allegations. I generally believe that he has a point. I think there is still a lot of cheating that goes on, where I would agree with him is I don't think that there are enough punishments for cheats. I think if you are caught cheating, you should probably be banned for like 5 years. Like a straight out ban, 5 years. And that would act as a proper incentive to discourage people from cheating. And they'd say, "We'll track your IP address. If you try to open a different account, you never have a verified account again. If you're a GM, you're not going to have a verified account. Ban you for 5 years." And that would act as a proper discouragement. When they're kind of inviting people like Hans Niemann back, who was already, admitted that he had been cheated on chess.com, this is where I kind of think, well, yeah, you're not doing a very good job here, because you're not really punishing these people. All they have to do is apologise, they're invited back on. To me, that's not enough to protect the people who are innocent. But again, they've got to do a balancing act, right? Because if they're too harsh, if they're too strict, it's a competitive environment. They're going to go to their competitors. They're going to go off somewhere else. They're going to go to Lead Chess, where maybe the rules aren't as strict. So, yeah, it's a difficult situation, and I think this is currently evolving. I hope with Kramnik he does stay away from chess.com, because I think that he kind of undermines his own argument when he says these things, and then like a week later he's back on playing Title Tuesday. So he genuinely believes that he doesn't want to play anymore because he thinks that people are cheating, which I think is fair enough. My own personal view is it's a lot less than it was. As I said before, you go on a few years ago, there were people that were really blatant. As far as my history with cheating is concerned, well, hopefully I haven't had any history with cheating myself, but I did make some allegations a few years ago about Igor Rausas, because I think he was like an obvious example of somebody I felt like had, he was dropping draws and losses to people who were lower rated than him. For that's probably why he was like 24-40, 24-50 like I am now, right? And then suddenly he would stop dropping draws and losses to people lower rated, and he would just beat them every single game in a very clean and clinical way. And so I started thinking this is very suspicious. The games were too clean, and as it turned out, he was obviously up to no good. He was caught in a toilet. He may well have had a more sophisticated method than that. I'm not sure if you could get to 2670 by just using that method of going to the toilet every now and again. It seems to be a little bit far-fetched. I did lose to somebody a few years ago. It was a title player in a weekend congress, and he kept jumping up and running off, and I regret not saying more at the time. And he crushed me. like legitimately crushed me. And I probably should have said something and said, look, this guy is suspicious. I should have said something at the time. There's been probably one or two examples, I would say 2 examples of cases where I feel like people have cheated against me over the board. I don't want to name names, but yeah, I think that why would you want to cheat against someone full stop? There's several reasons. I think, firstly, you want to get your rating higher. You're fed up with, having your rating low. You might be an insecure person. You can then boast about this online, that you've beaten such and such player. You can boast to your friends. There's a few reasons, money is another one, but of course in online tournaments it's hard to then reclaim that money. Also over the board tournaments, if I'd won, say, a weekend tournament with a mobile phone strapped to my leg and I won £500 and that comes out later in another tournament, how do you reclaim that £500 that I've won in that tournament that might have happened 3 or 4 years ago? You probably can't, right? So there are a number of issues relating to over-the-board cheaters and why they, and this also obviously relates to online chess as well. Why would they cheat? I believe it sometimes is because of an insecure personality. It's because they are genuinely greedy people and they just, they feel comfortable with cheating. They might have a lack of morals. Often you find kids cheat. I played in a lot of, I remember I played in Sarah Longson for her club, online club. I think it was maybe English Juniors or something. And I did a simul. And there were kids that were cheating against me in the simul. I could just tell they were cheating because they had really low ratings and they were like just playing unbelievable chess. And I basically flipped out and I said, look, you're cheating. And I accused them in the chat, which I probably shouldn't have done. And one kid kind of, And it turned out actually one kid was, because then he did a kind of apology kind of video that he was actually cheating and his mum was like really unhappy with that. But that's good, because that means he can move on from that and realise actually that's wrong behaviour. When adults cheat, like in the case of, say, for example, Rouses, it's a much more disturbing issue because you already know that that's bad behaviour. So why are you doing that? Yeah, and I think a lot of it is just insecurity and you want to raise your rating. Now, this is one of the red flags I thought about Rouses, why he was obviously slightly sus. And I did go around saying to people, I think this guy's sus. But people wanted to believe that he could improve. In my opinion, it's much harder to improve when you're in your 50s than it is when you're in your 20s or in your teens, for example. Because when you get older, now I'm 47, I'm no spring chicken. I just find I've got a lot of health issues now. I've got a bad back, probably got sciatica. Sitting down in this chair for a long period is no good for me, for example. My memory isn't as good as it was. I have a bad short-term memory, could be like early stages of dementia and stuff like that. Obviously my memory is probably better than most people because I'm a chess grandmaster, right? But I can't recall all this kind of opening theory that I might have done when I was younger. I mean, even Nakamura, he was saying in his podcast that, when he was younger, he would spend 5 hours learning. Before the game, he'd spend 5 hours preparing for the game. It's a long time to spend preparing for one game, right? I never did 5 hours, but he would memorize every variation, trying to get that variation down pat. He said he can't do that now. Probably less energy or less motivation to do that. As you get older, that's a natural thing that's going to happen. So it doesn't make sense that somebody when they're 20, 25 is not getting the same results as the same person when they're 50, 55, right? Because your motivation's going to go down. You've already got the GM title. Your energy levels are lower. So how come you're suddenly getting from 2480 to 2670? Something's not right. I mean, I looked at the games with Rouses and the games were too clean. And the other red flag with Rouses was the fact that he never bothered to play in super tournaments. Like he could have, I think the motivations for getting a higher rating would be that you would get invites to proper Super GM tournaments. You know, for example, he could have, in theory, played tournaments like the Dubai Open, getting decent conditions as a 2650 plus GM. He could have played Qatar Masters. He could have played in the Isle of Man. He never played in any of those tournaments. So I think the reason for that was because he realised if you're playing against people like Magnus Carlsen, you know, we saw what happened with Magnus Carlsen when he felt that Neiman was a bit off. They went completely ballistic. You know, if Rouse is going to the toilet every 5 minutes, he's gonna be sus, right? Magnus is a pretty clued-in guy. He's gonna think there's something off it. I remember Navarra, who's from the Czech Republic, and that was a country that Rousis was representing for a while. I don't know if he still does, but he obviously had his GM title. He said he played Rousis in a game. And Rouse's modus operandi when he was playing GMs who were higher rated than him would be to like set agreed draws, because he didn't want to make it look too suspicious, right? If he's like mauling these kind of 2600 guys. So Rousis was playing really well in the opening. This is what Navarro was saying, but he said he was already suspicious of behaviour because he kept going to the toilet a lot. And at some point, Rousis started getting short of time. He offered him a draw. And Navarro was like, no, you know, because he realised what's going on. He realised he's having to keep going to the toilet to maintain this level. Now he can't go to the toilet anymore. He's going to have to play himself because he's getting short of time. So Navarro carried on, and he ended up turning around a bad position and winning the game. So yeah, I do think there's a lot of issues going forward as regards internet cheating. Be interesting to see if there's any more developments in that area. I mean, we will get to the stage at some point, I'm sure, in the future where the anti-cheat detection methods are so good that you just won't be able to cheat online. You know, they won't need cameras in your room. They would have some kind of AI advanced software that will just be able to understand when somebody is off. When somebody is cheating, right? Even somebody who's smart cheating. You won't be able to smart cheat anymore. We're coming for you. But no, the reason I say that is because I think at the moment it's kind of like a drama, right? We can get our popcorn out and we can see, like Kramnik, throwing shade on this player and whatever. It's kind of entertaining, right? But eventually we'll get to that point and it won't be entertaining anymore, it'll be boring. So I kind of like this whole thing. I think it kind of creates this kind of drama that I think chess needs, really, to kind of hype it up. But yeah, these are kind of my feelings on the whole Kramnik allegations. And it'd be interesting to see going. Unfortunately, I closed my chess.com account because my theory was I was going to stream some Title Tuesdays actually myself, and actually maybe also follow some games and do some commentary as well. But unfortunately, I closed my chess.com account. The reason I did that was because I got addicted. So I asked them to open it the other day. It was like the fourth or fifth time I asked them to reopen it. They reopened it. Very kind of them. And then a few days later I had a complete binge and I played for like 7 hours in a row or something nuts. And I just decided to shut it again. I couldn't stop. I'm like addicted. I love chess. It's just so stimulating to play chess. But yeah. Anyway, these are my thoughts on the Kramnik allegations. Please leave your comments below. What do you think about Kramnik? Do you think he's on the ball, or do we think that he's got double standards and that he's making allegations about people when he shouldn't be?